Welcome back to Pagitt Radio, and we're broadcasting live out of the Twin Cities, religious radio that's not quite right. And, you know, I think that religion matters a lot in our world because you listen to news stories, and obviously, you know, what goes on all around the world is so deeply influenced by culture and tribalism and religion and ethnicity, and it's all blended together. And in the United States, we tend to think about religion as if it's this other thing, like it's its own standard. And you could say, well, that's your culture or your tribe, but it's not really your religion. And we've been able to separate those in some ways in our culture, you know, in a peculiar dissection. But in most of the world, you can't do that. And it shows up in the United States. It shows up in our culture and our cultural conversations in these larger debates. It becomes this undercurrent. It becomes this subtone. Those are huge headphones. It becomes this other narrative that people often can't figure out. So there's this thing going on with Chick-Fil-A. Carla, you've eaten the Chick-Fil-A's.
Oh.
You like the Chick-Fil-A's.
It's one of our places when we go to the South. Bojangles and Chick-Fil-A.
Okay, so it's a chicken shop, right? I mean, they sell chicken sandwiches. It's a place that sells a top quality chicken sandwich,
yep.
Right? I mean, that's what's going on there. Well, they've been owned and operated by a family, the Cathy family, for their entirety, and they're Christian people, and they've wanted to influence their business with their Christian identity. Oh, so good for them, right? So they're in a big kerfuffle right now. They got this big trouble going on because the owner, the current, has a real problem with this gay marriage thing. So he has said that, and that's caused the pro-gay marriage people and given a lot of money to try to defeat these movements. And people are uncomfortable if he's using the restaurants. They don't know if they want to go to the restaurant because is this just his view or the restaurant's view? So he had an interview on a radio program, and I want to play a little bit for that because there's a particular piece that bugs my Pagittian sensibilities on this one. It drives me crazy. So here's a little audio clip from another radio program talking about the owner when he was on yet another radio program because radio is the future. We're deep into this, but you're going to hear the owner, Mr. Cathy, suggesting his view of this here in this little audio clip.
Dan Cathy didn't realize the stir he would create when he spoke out against same-sex marriage to the Baptist press and on the Ken Coleman radio show.
I pray God's mercy on our generation that has such a prideful, arrogant attitude to think that we would, the audacity to try to redefine what marriage is all about.
All right, so here's what gets me about this. I disagree with him about the issue of gay marriage. But the bigger problem I have with his comments, it's this argument that religious people make so frequently, and it goes like this. What we believe as religious people, what we believe in our culture, that has been the way everyone has believed all the time. And you arrogant, prideful people who think that you know better. You don't know any better than all the thousands of years of agreement, and now you want to come along and change things. And I just think that this generation and its willingness to just give up all the things that have been so settled, that argument is so insidious, I think. It's far. You could plug in by redefining marriage or by trying to recreate the wheel or making new architecture or thinking new religious thoughts.
That argument's been used. I mean, you can count on all of our hands together. We couldn't count everything that's been used to fight back on slavery and women's issues and who knows what else.
Bad views of God, bad views of humanity, bad architecture,
who can be a church?
Dirty water.
Papacy.
Oh, it's crazy. I was reading this. I was reading this book about James Garfield, the president of the United States, who died because of an infection from a gunshot wound. And the doctors at the time didn't believe in infections. They didn't believe in germs. And they were saying to these doctors from England, who do you think you are to suggest that there's these things we can't see that are moving around and that are causing these kinds of problems?
Well, and all the things, like look at, for example, when you say that, I think of like Christian scientists. Right? Who don't have any, they have a belief system that doesn't include sort of westernized medicine and that kind of drug treatment sort of option. So you think, okay, probably most Christians, most people of faith at one point or another were skeptical of Western medicine.
That's right.
Right? Now we're not.
No, we're not.
But who were we to decide that God couldn't heal a body?
Right, and that's what's insidious, is him saying, I have a belief system, and anybody else who differs with me on my belief about this topic, you are so prideful. You are so arrogant. Like, okay, just listen to the guy again, because it drives me.
Pagitt here.
Because it
Dan
drives me
Cathy
crazy.
didn't realize the stir he would create
I don't
when
want
he
to do the
spoke
Glenn
out
Beck
against
thing, but
same-sex marriage to
just
the
listen
Baptist
to him.
press
Chart it.
and on the Ken Coleman
Blackboard.
radio show.
I pray God's mercy on our generation that has such a prideful, arrogant attitude to think that we would, the audacity to try to redefine what marriage is all about.
Prideful, arrogant attitude that we would have the audacity to try to recreate what marriage. What do you think? You read in the Bible lots of different views of marriage. They've been all over the place. From someone decides who you should marry.
Really, the polygamists are the most biblical.
You have multiple wives. Jesus not being married. Paul saying only get married if you think that you're burning with lust so bad you can't do anything else about it. And then now we have this kind of procreation marriage only inside of one man and one woman for the purpose of procreation, and that's it. And then to suggest, and you people are just wanting to redefine all that, and we've all been on the same page all the time, and you changers, you people with a different viewpoint. I've been through this before in the show, that in the state of Minnesota, in 1912, people with epilepsy couldn't get married.
Yeah.
Epileptics couldn't get married.
If you're a ward of the state, you couldn't get married.
And that was long standing,
Right.
like for a long. So somebody come along and say
that was in the laws of marriage, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was the law.
That
in
was the
Minnesota.
law. Yeah. There were 4 restrictions on who couldn't get married. Someone under the age of 16 for a female, someone who had epilepsy, someone who was a ward of the state, and someone who wanted to marry their own biological brother or sister.
Yeah.
Those were
and first cousins, right?
And now
that was in there, wasn't it?
we've taken out epilepsy from the list and added in same gender.
Yeah.
So we've switched it around. The point being, that's what happens in human development. And that's the thing about Mr. Cathy's comments that bother me so much, is that it's that same repressive attitude that's going to say to people, if you try to change anything that I like, then I'm going to declare you to be arrogant and prideful.
Right. Well, and it's a complete lack of understanding of where his own views have come from.
Nice.
It's just it's ignorant.
It's ignorant. And I've got to tell you, I don't despise all Southern Baptists, but I will tell you that perspective sits within Southern Baptistisms so deeply. It sits within some of the other Protestant and Catholic traditions. These people that feel that their tradition has held faithfully to the Christian faith as it was expressed through the centuries. And I run into these people all the time in the professional work that I do, and the books that I write, and the conversations that I have. I hear this all the time from people. Who do you think you are that you can redefine Christianity? Who do you think you are that you can redefine the meaning of the church?
And I think it's important too to say too that this isn't just an ideological conversation. I mean, that way of thinking is very dangerous. Like
to say we can't change.
To say we can't change, and that those who want to change are arrogant and need
prideful,
to repent
yes.
and prideful. Because that perspective is what leads to, people of a different race being hung from a tree.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like that, like it has serious, tragic ramifications in the lives of other people to hold that position. It's not just this isn't just a don't eat chicken conversation. This is a deep level of I don't even know what. It's just, it creates a deeper level of real human tragedy.
Yeah, of whatever struggle someone had, whatever struggles exist.
Right, because it dismisses people's real lived experience to say, if that experience is pushing back on what I've said, that's not my problem.
Right.
That's your problem.
Yeah.
And you need to repent. You need to get over it, because something you are doing is pushing back against what's real and what's true.
Yeah, and it's the trickiest thing within Christian religion, because in Christianity, there is a strong sensibility that you don't want to be prideful and you don't want to be arrogant.
Right.
So pride and arrogance is a big deal, because it really hurts. Pride and arrogance are bad things. So if you can declare that somebody else is the prideful one, that someone else is the arrogant one, then you win. It would seem to me that what's prideful and arrogant is the guy who says, What I think about this issue is the only way to think about this issue. And anybody else who wants to think differently about it, well, there's something wrong with it. How is that not prideful? Right. The only way you get to that not being prideful is to say, well, everyone has always assumed this, and you're wanting to change it is coming because you think you're special from the rest of us. Where actually what these Christian folks are saying, like Mr. Cathy, is he has a belief that is special compared to everyone else. Mm-hmm. So his argument is all the rest of culture, and I think this is fair, and he's welcome to call into the show anytime he wants to let us know about this. All the rest of culture is going in one direction. And he sees that direction is the wrong one.
Right, and so he's got to dig in because he's the guardian now of the truth.
And everyone else are the prideful ones, but he's not prideful because he's... And it's that claim, it's that declaration that other people are arrogant and prideful and that they have the audacity to do something so insidious as to suggest that perhaps a deeply held conception in this country by a lot of people has been misguided.
Well, and and
you just win every argument that way.
Right, and it's a way to dehumanize the opposition.
Ugh.
It's a way to say, I don't have to take you seriously. I don't have to listen to what you have to say. I don't even have to honor you as a fellow human being. I don't have to give you any common
courtesy
because
you're prideful.
Now.
Because you're being, and when you get over being prideful, then we can
we'll
talk about this. Mm-hmm. Well, what is it that makes me prideful? Well, you want to change something that people clearly have never wanted to change.
The position that you hold is what makes you prideful.
Yes, the position that
pot.
Did you call him pot?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, see, and that's what runs more deep in this conversation than simply, and I don't mean to minimize the issue of people's proclivities, sexual interests, or inherent desires towards someone of the same gender. I'm not trying to minimize that at all. Mm-hmm. By saying that it's a bigger issue than just that.
Well, right now that's the same-sex marriage thing is the topic to which it's being applied.
That's right. That's what it is, yeah.
It'll be a new one.
Oh, it's the same argument
5 years from
all
now,
the time.
It'll be a new one 10 years from now.
Right, and there's a way in the Christian narrative that you get to apply that to the stories that come out of the book of Genesis, right? So I was recently, about 2 years ago, my eyes were opened as to how a certain group of conservative Christians see the world and see people like me in it. They've said, look, there's a story that we tell in Christianity. It's the story of temptation. And the story of temptation is that you have these two characters, Adam and Eve, who are living in harmony with God. Mm-hmm. God has given them instructions. People are living in harmony with God. Now, these people like to tell the story that you have two actual people who lived 6,527 years ago, and they were in a garden, and we could go find that garden, and that Lord God was walking in the... So they want to be very literalist about it. I don't need to be. Could still say there's a story where humanity lives well with God. Then something goes wrong. Well, what goes wrong? Oh, it's when the serpent comes along and says to the woman, did God really say, don't eat from the fruit of the forbidden tree? Because, God's just tricking you. So these people said to me, see, the Christian narrative has an explanation for how humanity got into all this trouble.
Well, and what was that? What was it? It was pride.
It was that someone came along and said, did God really say this? So when you, Mr. Pagitt or pastor or heathen, when you declare that maybe God didn't say such and thus, you are playing the role of the serpent. You're playing the role of the tempter. So when you say maybe God didn't say that marriage is only between a man and a woman, when you question that, you are now on the side of the tempter. Mm-hmm. So they would say, you just have to see, we see you and other people like you as in the storyline playing the role of the tempter. To which my response is, but if you get to declare all the rules of the game, like you get to say, here's what God says, and then you get to say,
What? How do they know they're not the tempter?
That's what I said. But what you're saying, God said, God never said.
And
you said it, and you said God said it. It just
and
makes
you're like,
me nuts.
I believe as deeply as you believe
that God didn't say that.
So maybe you're the serpent. Start saying that to people.
Oh,
you are.
That's what it got. I'm rubber, you're glue.
That's
I got all that stuff. All of a sudden you turn into second grade, and this is what runs. This is what runs beneath so many of the other conversations that people are having, right? Is this notion that folks would say, hey, if you're suggesting any other way of understanding the world than the way I understand it, you're in the role of the devil. Right. And you are prideful and you are arrogant, and that's what got Satan kicked out of heaven. Like, all that kind of thing is what just shuts down anybody from suggesting maybe things aren't the way you've said they are.
And that's
here,
what it's
sir.
meant to do.
That's
how else
exactly
are you
what it's
going to
meant to
preserve
do.
your power if you got people asking questions all the time? That's the beginning of the end for you right there.
So this Chick-Fil-A thing doesn't bother. There's no Chick-fil-A's around here. I wouldn't eat at one of those places. I don't particularly care about the Chick-fil-A-ness. I mean, they're not that great of burgers or chicken. Is it just chicken? Do they sell any cow?
No.
There's no cow there at all.
It's good chicken. It's going to be a rough trip to the south for us next
Look,
time.
it's
all
just
I can
chicken. When it comes to chicken, there's the range of not very good chicken to really, really good chicken is so, isn't it teeny?
That's true.
Just,
it's a small,
I mean,
it's a pretty narrow gap.
I have a friend that says it's like sex. When it's good, it's really good. When it's not very good, still pretty good. So
same thing with chicken.
Yeah, same thing with chicken. Like, okay, so whatever. Like really, people can't find a better chicken or an equally good chicken place. I mean, it's
and now it's become a new culture war thing, right?
That's
like,
right.
Which side are you going to be on? Because now you're either going to be on the side of truth and religious freedom.
Yes, I heard that the same gendered marriage people, which I think is a much better way to describe it than gay marriage. Yeah. Because people get married for lots of reasons. Yeah. People don't just get married because they want to be in love, because they're in love with the person. Yeah. There's people that get married for all kinds of expediencies. Yeah. And once you open that up, where a man could marry a man for any reason he wants to marry him, because when you get married in this country, you don't have to say you love the person. There's no legal requirement to loving the person. Mm-hmm. You just have to say, the two of us are going to join our lives together in this agreement, in this structure. Now, your religion might make sure you're loving the person, and if you're in some kind of a fringy cult group, they might make sure that you're demonstrating that love in some particular way. But most people don't do that. There's no requirement to. When you fall out of love with someone, your marriage is. Love has nothing to do with marriage as an institution, right? It's between two people. Yep. So two people could get married for whatever reason they want. Maybe they want to share a house and they want the tax credit and they want to be roommates and they're not sexually interested in each other at all, but they're like, hey, this is a much better way for us to do that. Let's just get married, right? Like that drives these people, like I think our cultural friend here, Mr. Cathy, crazy. Because his larger argument in this interview was, and John heard it more fully than I did. It was the argument that if you're going to create babies, then you need to have a man and a woman, and because a baby requires the genetics of both male and female, then of course the child needs the relational and social influences of both male and female, right? So they're saying. This is a very common argument in the creation paradigm of this, right? That it takes male and female to make a baby, so it takes male and female to raise a baby. Fair enough. Then we should have that conversation.
Babies don't have anything to do with marriage either.
Exactly. That's the point.
I know lots of people who are married and don't have babies.
And I know lots of people who aren't married and have babies. Shelley and I are not making any more babies.
But you're still married.
We're still married.
But you made them. That's the point. But
after you're done making them, we don't see.
We have lots of friends who have never made babies.
But we don't raise them anymore.
They're still as married as married can be.
We now have adult children, and that's that. So it just the argument every argument people make against gay marriage
is dumb.
It doesn't hold water. It doesn't add up. So you have to ask yourself, then what is it? It ain't that. Mm-hmm. And after you peel away and peel away and peel away, you realize it's not that. then what is it? Now, I think we should be more generous with everyone who has a differing opinion than we hold, to try to understand from their vantage point why they make the argument they make.
Right.
But
people have to be honest to do that, and people have a hard time being honest about this sort of thing.
That's right. The recipient of an idea you disagree with has to be open enough to hear it, and the deliverer of that opinion has to be open enough to be honest about why they hold
and
it.
And that's like the Chick-Fil-A guy. You know what? If he wants to believe that and do that with his company money, the privately owned company,
sure,
knock yourself out. I don't have any problem with him doing what he wants with his money. I do have a problem with him saying anyone who disagrees with me now is arrogant and now all of a sudden, like he said in an interview 2 weeks ago, he doesn't want to be political about it.
Yeah.
Well, guess what, buddy? You just made yourself political.
Yeah.
Now you keep talking about this, and you keep digging yourself in. You should have just shut up and said, you know what? It's my company. It's my money. This is something I believe in.
Yes, and
people, and it would be done.
Yeah, more power to anybody who says, I have a deeply held conviction about an idea, and I want to
and he could say,
use the resources of my
other people can do what they want
money
to,
and business
but
and
this
company.
is my business and my money,
Which is
and
fine.
this is what I'm going to do.
But when he went on the radio show and then had these comments about, I just pray for this generation of ours because we are arrogant and we are prideful because we have the audacity
That's
to
not
want to
helping the conversation one little bit.
That now has that's an argument that he's injecting into a larger cultural milieu.
Right.
And I think that we should take those kinds of comments and then respond to them.
That's right.
And say that is a very, very bad formula. You do that, and I'm telling you, we are off into troubled land. That's the editorial for this week.